All right, welcome to episode 11 of The Journey. We've made it past, as we discussed last week, a milestone of 10 episodes that most podcasts don't make it to. So how do y'all feel about that?
Just another day, man.
Just another day on the journey.
I think you should insert some clapping hands.
I think one of these buttons does that, but I don't remember which one it is.
All right, well, you figure that out for next time. We can give yourself a round of applause.
Okay.
That's all we're missing is sound effects.
Well, yeah, if you've got any ideas for sound effects, you just send them in to thejourney@rpcdothan.org.
Speaking of that, did you get any emails this week?
Well, as we discussed on the episode last week,
I'm sorry.
We're still a few weeks ahead of the posting schedule, so we should still be a few weeks until we start getting emails.
I did have a few people talk about our
I got Wednesday night.
Podcast.
Would y'all like to highlight some of our listeners? Who were you talking to, Broxton?
Well, that's what I was about to say. Wednesday night after dinner, I came back up to my office to get my laptop to go downstairs for Bible study, and I was stopped 4 times.
Wow.
4 different people?
Yeah, to get feedback on the journey.
Who were they?
I mean, should we just make people feel really special and call everybody out by name?
I think maybe we should give some people a shout. Thanks for listening.
Feel comfortable that they mind being called out?
Yeah.
Okay. If you do.
I mean, they're our most loyal and devoted fans. So Mitch Lucky said that I have listened to all 8 episodes at the time that he was telling me this, 8 episodes in 2 days.
Wow.
So we've got our first, like if we were handing out little badges, like he
gets the binge badge.
Yeah, he get the binge badge.
Yes.
He told me I made him feel bad because he listened to one episode, and I guess it was the episode that I said something about being hard to listen to podcasts and remember what you're listening to, and not being able to do 2 things at one time. And he was doing some work at his house, and he was listening, and then I said that, and he's like, he had to turn it off because he couldn't even, he didn't even know what we talked about prior to that.
Yeah,
and he had to start
hit that minus 15 seconds and listen again.
Yes, sir.
We also had Miss Marcia Ross. She was trying to figure out how she could write a review.
Oh, wow.
And so I told her that we would, obviously we can't do a video tutorial, but she was asking how she could support the show. And I said, well, you need to go leave us a review on Apple Podcast. And so right here live on the air, we're going to figure out how to leave a review.
Uh-oh.
Live.
We got some dead air time though. So
what are our platforms? We got Apple Podcasts that you can listen to. What do y'all listen to podcasts on?
Apple.
Yeah.
Almost all of them. Now I will listen to this one on Substack because we're connected to it. I mean, we're literally connected to it on Substack individually, but without exception, any other podcast is an Apple podcast. What about y'all?
See, I have a hot take.
Go.
I don't want to just listen to the podcast.
You got to see it.
I have to see it. I watch on YouTube, and for the majority of the time, I'm listening to something and doing something else.
In the office or in your house? Because
mostly in the office. If
Okay.
I'm doing something that I don't want to say doesn't take my full attention, but something that I can kind of multitask doing, then I want to have it up on a separate screen and just be able to some of these people listening to us right now, they may have never seen us before. Have you ever thought about that?
I'm okay with that.
See, to me, I'm I've got to know who's speaking. I may never even see this person again, but
I think
it adds a different element.
I've got a remedy for that. If I ever get around to posting clips on social media, like I told myself I would, I was going to do a little graphic for each of us. And so if it's a clip of Lance, it would, it'd have Lance's staff picture or directory picture or whatever, his Facebook profile picture. And then that would be your way of distinguishing. When you hear this voice, you know that you're listening to this person.
Yeah. I'm almost always in the car. So that's why I'm an Apple podcast person. I can just listen to it.
So we had
even if I'm in the car though, I'll cut it on YouTube and just set it. I won't watch it obviously.
Yeah.
But.
So we had this discussion in our group text last week. Do you actually listen to our show?
I do, because we're 3 weeks or 4 in arrears. And so I'm like, well, what did I say or what did we say? So I do. And then, just to reinforce what we talked about, I think it's good to listen to y'all.
I started last week,
Yeah, I listened.
but I didn't even listen to the whole thing.
I listened to about 20 minutes of last week's episode when Broxton sent it to us. Just out of curiosity, I really haven't listened to the actual podcast itself.
It does also help that you can just cruise the transcript, and kind of pop in where you want and pop out.
Be careful with that transcript, though, because that does not get edited. So
Yeah.
Sometimes it is mistaken.
Yeah.
All right. So I've discovered that we have 3 reviews
Oh,
on Apple Podcast. So should we read them?
how many stars?
5 out of 5. We've got 4 total ratings.
Let's go.
So I don't know who left us a rating, but then didn't leave a review.
That's okay. We'll take it.
We thank you.
How do you even see that?
So are you on the Apple, on
Yeah.
the show page? Scroll all the way down. Yeah, after you scroll for a little bit, it should give you like ratings and reviews.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then
here we go.
there's a little button that says write a review.
Got it.
So Marsha, that's what you're looking for.
Easiest way is on Apple, so that's what you're saying, correct?
Yeah, I think they tell me that the way that podcasts grow, other than, word of mouth and sharing links and stuff, that reviews help.
Is that one? There's one here by Oxton Brannon.
Ah.
Oxton.
Did you just, maybe you left your own review.
Well, given
Who is this day you talk about?
we're just experts.
Oh, okay. Experts.
Experts.
Expert podcast?
Yeah, the industry.
Okay.
Although I've never heard Joe Rogan say, leave us a review. And
Well,
he seems
when
to have
you-
figured out the
When
industry.
you have millions upon millions of people, I think it's kind of understood.
Yeah.
Okay, so do y'all want to read some reviews?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
go for it.
Okay, these are pretty lengthy. So how about we take,
Snippets.
well, I was going to say everybody could read a review.
Okay, yeah. Just pass me a phone.
Okay, well, the only one that's coming up for me right now comes into us from mlucky1392. So that would be our first binge listener, Mitch Lucky. He writes and says, 5 stars, by the way, motivational and challenging. I have known some of these awesome men now for a couple years and have known one for many years. I think he's talking about me. These guys walk the walk daily.
Ooh.
Clap.
We'll figure out the clap button for next week. These guys walk the walk daily, and that is exactly what they want for their fellow believers, not just their fellow church members. It is awesome to hear the challenging discussions and the real discussions from these men other than from a setting of a connection group or a pulpit. Life is real, and the closer you walk with Jesus, the more the enemy tries to intervene, and these men live this out in conversation for us to hear and learn from. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to lead us. You're welcome, mlucky1392. Thanks for leaving your review.
I got one here, I guess. Are we just reading these on Apple?
Yeah, I mean, there's only 4 of them, so
I read
Yeah,
that
you got
there's-
it. I just had to follow the
there's-
show. I'm sorry.
There's 3 of them. This one looks like it comes from Amy Spry. So shout out to Amy. 5-star, thoughtful and interesting conversation. Love hearing from pastors on staff at my home church share about day-to-day issues we all face. These guys are the real deal.
thanks, Amy.
Appreciate it, Amy.
I'm getting the journey when I call up. Journey.
All right, let's see if
I
we
only
can,
see one more.
see if we can get you the link. Share.
I see one from Joanna Lisa.
And you know what? This is what this podcast is for. Raw and uncut. Just
A must listen. Am I
life.
reading it?
Yeah.
A must listen. If you don't know them, this is a great way to get to know them. It's funny. It's God-centered.
I think the funny part had to do with me, Broxton. Insert my claps.
Clap. Clap,
that
clap,
one.
Not-
clap.
Wah, wah, wah.
Somebody,
That was the laugh
Hey, let's
button.
go.
somebody figure us out a. Did he do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, people
Really?
they're laughing. The people are laughing.
Are they?
As they should be.
Oh, me.
It says we might also like Dateline.
All right.
I saw that too.
Okay, I found
what?
Dateline.
On the bottom down here, it says,
We're about to be on NBC,
you
new
might
sponsor.
also like Dateline True Crime.
Okay, I found the
Crime
applause
podcast.
button, but I don't think anybody heard it because we were all talking over it.
Oh, go ahead.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Way to
You're
go,
the only one that
guys.
can hear that, Brock.
We made it to
we can't
episode 11. Way to go, guys.
and we're fired.
Who's gonna fire us?
I don't know.
there are people
We'd
that
have to have some more. We'd have to have some more listeners.
There are people that can.
Okay, so we spent the first 11 minutes being extremely self-serving,
Yes.
talking about all the feedback we've gotten on the show. Any other self-serving things we need to cover? Chase, we've got to help your dad. Whenever he tries to comment on Substack, he says that he gets an email that requests a verification code.
Really?
Well, I
And
think
I
that's,
said I've
I think
never-
Substack is something new, a little
They
bit
might have
different.
taken his identity.
So maybe, I mean, we're posting something on Facebook with these something, aren't they? Isn't there like something?
Yeah,
on-
the link that I post on Facebook is the link to Substack.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess for our people just listening, if you want to, if Facebook's easier for you to comment, at least just on the post, like know that that's availability as well.
And that'll help us on Facebook because the more engagement there is on the Facebook post, the more Facebook will show the post.
Yeah, so I think Substack's a little bit new to some folks, and then like,
I will say it is a little difficult to maneuver
and you know,
until
like
you kind of get it figured out.
the whole question I had about a pen or a note or a whatever the difference thing, and I still hadn't really figured it all out.
Well, at least you have stuck with it, unlike Bradley, who
He did give it 4 minutes.
subscribed to the journey for all of 4 minutes until he downloaded the Substack app and
Did he unsubscribe too?
he deleted his whole Substack.
Oh, he
Like,
took
he
the
wasn't-
time to make one.
He
and then
wasn't
deleted it?
writing. He wasn't writing one. He was just like, he subscribed to the journey. So he had to make an account or put in his email address. And, I noticed that like his bio had nerd in it. And so I sent it to him and I said, this is the best part of your little description here. And he took offense to that.
As he should.
Well, what he said was that he got on Substack and was just unhappy with how it was social media, basically.
I could see that.
So he just deleted it. So, I mean, he doesn't want to
Well, he's a man of conviction.
support the show, and I'm blasting him because he'll never hear it if he's not going to listen to it. So,
Wow, that's low, Broxton, even from you.
okay.
Well, Chase, tell us. You said you had an interesting story from this week.
Oh, well, that I don't really know if that's podcast worthy story.
All right. I'll pull up the group message.
I mean, what?
That was mostly just to be able to show off the picture, self-serving,
yeah, but
show
I
off
mean,
the picture.
honestly, it's a good.
We don't have
It's
to
a good
spend the whole
story.
podcast on it, but we can celebrate.
He said,
It's hold on. It's a celebration, but it's also a story of doubt.
It is a story of doubt.
A story of doubt that turns into one of hope.
Yeah, man, preach it, Auburn. I do feel.
Come on, somebody.
I do feel bad because I did doubt my 11-year-old son. I doubted my 11-year-old son. So we were blessed with the opportunity to go deer hunting, which I hadn't really said this probably on the show, which is something that I really enjoy doing, like probably top 5, close to the top. If I could just like stop anything and go do something for the day, it would be deer hunt. And so really enjoy that. So got to go deer hunting last week, and both of my older 2 sons, my 10-year-old and 11-year-old, we went together, the 3 of us. That was a jam-packed deer stand. I'll just leave it at that. But we were sitting there, and right close to dark, a deer comes out, and basically it really did not leave a really good shot for us to take. But my oldest son was going to try to take the shot, had the gun up ready. The deer gets to the edge of the field, and I kind of made a noise to stop it so it would turn and look at us so that he could get a shot off. Well, about the time he turns, looks at us, it's a buck, biggest buck he's ever killed. And by the time he goes to shoot, he pulls the trigger, and the deer was also stepping kind of out of the field at the same time. So gun goes boom, loud, couldn't really tell, it was getting close to dark what exactly happened. Well, I just really thought he missed. So like he missed this deer, and I don't know. Missing a deer is like probably striking out, or, like it's pretty hard feeling for the deer hunter that just had the opportunity to kill one that was bigger than anything else he'd ever killed. So I get down to go see if there's any blood, and I get down there and I didn't see any blood. So I come back and I'm like, buddy, I don't think you hit that deer. And I could just see it on him. He was struggling. He knew that he potentially missed it. But he kept saying, Dad, I know I had the gun on him. Dad, I know I had him in the scope. Dad, I know I hit that deer. And so the guys that were gracious enough to take us hunting get there and have flashlights. And so we go to this area, and we go in the area where I knew the deer went. We walk down the trail. I didn't see any blood. The other guys hadn't seen anything yet. And one guy walks on in the woods a little bit further, and I just kind of turn around to look better in the area where I thought it was. And I saw one speck of blood, and then another guy saw some more. And then one of the other guys I hear say, here's the deer. Here's the deer. There he is. There he is. And sure enough, that little joker that I doubted, made a pretty good shot in a really difficult situation and killed him a 10-point.
So you might say that you were a naysayer.
A naysayer. Yeah. He, as the Alabama people, the lank terminology has been used, in different settings. And so we go and we get the deer, we load it up, and we are starting to leave. We realized he left something in the field. So my other son went to get it, and I looked at my oldest son that shot the deer, and I just said, buddy, I can't believe you killed that deer. I just did not think you did that. And he looked at me and said, well, you know what they say, don't you, Dad? Lank, and threw up the lank symbol. And he wanted me to know that I was a naysayer, and he was letting me know about it. So I don't know. I mean, I know that's not like this great big deal maybe to y'all, but for me, pretty cool experience as a dad, getting to be there with your kids, and something they like to do, something I like to do. And he shot a good deer.
I think that's pretty cool. And what did you take away from it other than maybe don't doubt your kid?
Well, I actually had this thought, and I know this is completely kind of off to a degree, but like
off the cuff.
But
R.I.P.
This yesterday's connection group lesson here was Leviticus, and it was talking about the process that the Old Testament the Israelites had to go through to sacrifice and bring these offerings to God to be atoned for their sins, and the work of the priest in the tabernacle and the different settings that would be taking place there. And so I had, like, as confident as Collins was, and I was actually studying that lesson some while I was sitting in the deer stand and reading while the boys were reading. And it made me think about, as he was that confident that he had killed that deer, it just made me think about like the confidence that we can have in experiencing the presence of God. Like, whereas in the Old Testament, there was this like question mark, like, did we atone for, like, did we do everything right? Did we bring the sacrifice like we were supposed to? Did we bring the offering like we're supposed to? And there was probably some question marks, I would think, there for how all the process went. But for us, we can confidently know that what Jesus did is finished and it is done. And because of that, we can boldly approach the throne of God and be in his presence.
Yeah.
So had that thought. I mean, that was a little spiritual difference side of it, not necessarily like doubting your kid or not, but just that was something that the Lord kind of spoke to me as I was studying that lesson and experiencing that story.
And you couldn't give a perfect sacrifice then. And that was really the whole point.
Right.
But I sure do get the connection, because now we have a perfect sacrifice that already has been, and we can take rest in that and confidence to approach him and know that we have access. I think that's a pretty good connection.
Yeah. And it's neat too, like you know, as a parent with my kid in that situation, like, you know, I don't necessarily think it was a bad thing for me to doubt him or like let him kind of question that, you know, because like, I mean, things are going to face. We're at lunch today, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to let your kids fail from a source that we were at lunch with today, you know, and so like let him struggle with that a little bit, you know, of like, man, did I miss it? Did I not? How do I deal with that? Because difficult things happen, you know, in life, and failure is a real thing that they have to deal with and we have to deal with. But it sure was exciting when you went from like, man, you thought you were defeated and he missed the deer and then to see the horns, like the excitement on his face and neat to his brother, like shout out to his little brother, because his little brother could have been like jealous and worked up, but man, he was just as excited, to get those horns, and now they got to find a place in their room to hang up some horns.
Amen.
Roxanne, what do you think about deer hunting?
Never been.
My dad, he could have lived in the woods. I mean, he would have been fine if he was born in 1711. He would have been perfect there. And he took me hunting a few times, and I was just ready to go home from the get-go, which I know had to frustrate him to no end. But, you know, I remember him asking one time, what, do you just not like to hunt? I'm like, no, I don't particularly like to hunt. I'm okay with shooting. You know, you want to put a deer out there on a conveyor belt, I'll shoot them, but I don't really want to sit here all day and might see a deer and might not. And he just remember, shake his head like, all right, let's go. So that wasn't where we connected.
It seems like it would be an expensive hobby to get into, though.
Initially.
I mean, there's expense to it, but I mean there's
guns,
expense to most hobbies.
Yeah, guns are expensive, but there are more expensive ones out there. Golf is probably a lot more expensive.
Yeah, but you also got to think, like, if you actually kill something and you don't know how to clean it, you're really paying for it then.
You do.
And, like, processing
You
it.
do.
That's what I mean. Like if you had land that you were going to hunt on, you know, you got to upkeep the land, and then there's all the, like Lance said, buying a gun, buying bullets, processing equipment, tree stands, feeders, feed.
You could get into the money that way if you did it that way. My dad just grabbed a gun and went out and walking around the woods. It was basically how he hunted.
Well, technically, I live in the city limits, so.
But isn't there more of a thrill if, like, you go on public land, you know, because it's not really as, I would say, cultivated or prepared. You're just like, it really is the randomness of whatever's there. Whereas, you know, if you go to somebody's land who's taking care of it, who's got feeders,
are you really hunting a deer if you're just like.
You are for sure. But you got to think about those who go hunt public land that, like, they're not going out there each week putting out corn.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, is it really hunting if you're just sitting there that you've fed a deer and you're just waiting for it to come eat? That's different than tracking a deer through the woods.
Yeah, but what are you supposed to be, Red Riding Hood running through the woods?
Well, it's just I want to be precise with our terms. That's all.
2 words, Daniel Boone.
Yeah, Daniel Boone.
His some age.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, for our situation and timing of life right now, it is nice to just be able to show up and be blessed to go sit somewhere where somebody's done all the work and prepared the process for you, because we just don't get to go as much. But like growing up, I mean, we would go to the land and do all the work and prep everything. And like, I enjoy that just as much as I did like sitting in the stand, like trying to scout where the deer would go and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, I think there's like a little bit of, to me, luck involved with the public land, because you just really don't know, and it just might happen, it might not, which is kind of like questionable and uncertain. But there's like more strategy involved when you actually take the time to pattern the direction of the animals and work through that. And, then you're selective on what you shoot or don't shoot, So, I mean, it just depends on how you look at it. For me, it's just a place. It's an outlet. It's a hobby outlet that I've enjoyed. So that's unique to me. But
to the question of being okay to let your kid in that moment, maybe he quote failed unquote in that moment, and maybe he didn't. As a parent of young kids, how do you balance that as a parent? Because you love your kids and you really don't want to see them in those moments, but you also know that that's usually where they grow the most. And I'm sure there's a desire not to want to see them struggle, but knowing that they're probably better for it in the long run. How do you balance that as a parent, and how do you see that playing out in their spiritual lives now?
I think first off, one of the things I've seen is that when one of our kids have failed, I have made it more of a bigger deal than it really is to them. And so like, yes, they might be devastated for a little while, but they get over it really quick. Whereas it like hurts me longer. I remember, and some of the guys in here, I think y'all might remember the story. Like Collins, like missed a touchdown, the game-winning touchdown in flag football, like when he was like 5 or 6, and I hurt for him in it, and he was upset in the moment. But by the time we got home, it was like, I mean, he did ask if he could watch the top 10 most like embarrassing misses of the NFL history. And like, so we're YouTubing like the top 10 best missed catches in NFL history. But like, he was good with it. So first and foremost, like we make it a lot of times as parents, or I make it at least on my story, a bigger deal than it really is to the kid. And then what I've seen is as I make it a big deal to them, it becomes a bigger deal for them. And I'm really not doing good for them when I'm making it like that to them. So I've had to step back and first off, understand that yes, failure is going to happen, and it's really not as big of a deal to them than I think it is. And then secondly, when it happens, my response as a parent is really key. Like, it's easy to try to, I think, when our kids fail, try to go and fix the problem, or go and fix the situation. I'm going to go talk to the coach, or I'm going to go talk to the league person, or I'm going to go and have the conversation with certain people. And I mean, I've had those conversations and I've done those things. But probably the best thing in those situations is just step back and be ready to talk to the kid when they're ready to talk about it, if they even need to talk about it, kind of thing.
I don't know if there's a connection there or not, but it just thinking about this in general, the Bible was written to struggling people. And we've had it so good here in America that I wonder if it's hard for us to connect with that sometimes, because even though we've talked about how things have changed in this country over the past 5 or 6 years, it's still nothing at all compared to what Christians were feeling and experiencing at the time these New Testament books were written, not to mention the Old Testament. But I wonder if there's a lesson there in trying to explain to people that, again, as I mentioned earlier, so much of the growth, I think, in growing closer to the Lord often takes place in our lower moments. And as a parent, it's very easy for your first inclination to be, we don't want them to experience those moments ever, and to protect that. But then as they occur, to allow them to occur and make that connection. I wonder if we're missing something because we have had it so good for so long. Or is that just me?
It's not just you.
Dynamite drop in.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, our culture is one that, is so me centric, and so whatever I want, however I want, that to some extent, I don't, do we really think people know how to fail and be okay?
I don't, and that's kind of where I was getting at. I don't think we do. And I don't think we know how to grow from it.
Is it okay to fail?
Yeah, I think
Ask
you need to
Jalen Hurts if it's okay to fail.
All right.
Well, when you ask the question, I mean, obviously we're coming off of, this is the Monday after the Super Bowl, and his story comes to mind. I don't know if we can talk about it.
What was it that he said a couple years ago? God had an opinion of me, or God had a plan for me before you had an opinion.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
And last night,
That'll preach.
I mean, at the end of the game, I mean,
Come on, somebody.
At the end of the game, they said something to him, and he does talk about the failures and learning from them and moving forward.
I think that this may be controversial.
We need a controversy button. I'll get on that.
Yeah, I think we do need to fail at times, and I say that because at the end of the day, a failure is in some way, shape, or form a trial that you experience. And so obviously in the book of James, he talks about the trials that you face, build your endurance, and hopefully you are mature enough in the faith that when trials come and when failures come, you know where to look and where to seek, and that is to seek the Lord. Whereas for Jalen Hurts, as just an example, I mean, he came and was a freshman All-American, correct? I mean, he was a starting quarterback as a freshman at the University of Alabama. I mean,
26-2
to go from the highest peak to being benched to fail in a national championship game, to then have to wait a year, be a great person and teammate, not disrupt what's going on, to then leave and have an opportunity of your own, to then be drafted, to then be discounted as a draft pick, to then have the opportunity to be a starter, to then not be good enough to win a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, to now being able to win a Super Bowl. I don't think in any way, shape, or form he would tell you, I would rather have not failed at those points in life. Because of those failures and because of how he responded to those failures, it allowed him to understand and to grow not only as a person, but I mean, from all looks, he seems like a Christian, and he seems to point things towards God and how God has worked in and around his life and fueled, his passions and desires. And I think the same can be true for us. The way we fail and respond in these times of trials and adversity will either ultimately point us towards God or they're going to ultimately point us away from God.
I think what's interesting is like when you think about failure, the opposite of that is success. And we've talked already on the journey about the importance of knowing that it's not always about being successful. It's about being faithful to what God's calling us to. And so when we fail, if our mindset towards that is God is calling me to be successful, then we feel defeated. We feel as if there's nowhere to turn from that. But when we think about faithfulness, failure is a part that helps us desire, I would say, to work through what we need to work through to be faithful versus just this mindset of successful. Because when you fail, to me, it's easy to get down and upset, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you stay there, then you're not ever going to move on from it. Mm-hmm. And you got to use that those daily failures or those moment failures to say, look, it doesn't have to be this way through my journey. Yes, failures are going to come. We're not perfect, not going to be perfect. But it's how we say, okay, God, you have a plan, you have a purpose that's greater than myself and what I can even imagine. And so my desire is to just step back and say, yes, today was not a good day. And I don't know about y'all. I have days that aren't good days. I have days that I say things that in ways maybe I don't need to say them. I don't treat my kids the way that I need. Not very patient with some kids sometimes, not very honoring and loving to my wife at certain times in different situations. I might not respond the way I need to respond to some folks here at the church in with some grace and love, or some situations. But I don't have to let those things be who I am. I can use those to move forward and say, man, I want to be different than that, and allow my failures to hopefully kind of drive some bigger steps to being more faithful in the journey.
Yeah, that's good.
Why do y'all think it seems like, and it really seems like the culture in America is kind of not built around, but has become one where, you don't fail. You can't fail. We want everybody to be, the same, and nobody's better. And, that sort of mindset of like, it's not, Broxton, it's not your actions that caused X, Y, or Z. It's
Somebody else's
actions. You know why? Because I feel like, especially in the Gospels, you see this personal walk, but it's all about, hey, this is ups, this is downs. But yet, especially in America, it's like we just want everybody to be up. And that's not really life.
I think when our founding fathers came across and established the country, they went through a lot. And what they went through kind of set the foundation for us now. Several generations later, it's gotten better and better and better and better and better. I don't know if you'd call it better right now, but comparatively speaking, it is. And I think each generation's goal has been, well, let's make it a little bit better than the last generation. And in that process, we've just wanted to try to remove discomfort from the equation. And that can be counterproductive. And I don't know how you get it back once that becomes the mindset of the country, is just, let's just figure out a way to remove all discomfort. Life doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, you just initially don't want to fail. And obviously you don't want to put anybody else in a situation where they're going to fail. And so we've tried to lay before people an opportunity for everything to kind of work out the way, we want it to work out. And I think the struggle is that, like, we just don't do a good job. I don't do a good job of just realizing their failure is just a part of life. I mean, we are going to experience that. You just mentally don't want to even put that in your mind. And so because of that, we've just let it become like this thing that we just don't even touch, and don't even want to touch.
Well, we don't really try a lot of things either, because if you don't try new things, then you don't have to fail at new things. So
I think that's a big part of it as well. And I don't know where we picked that up, because for the Christian, you have stories sprinkled throughout Scripture of people that failed, and God used for great things despite those human failures. And I think the whole point of God allowing those stories to be in Scripture was to show that we're going to fail. And through some of those moments, some of the biggest victories can later be realized. And I don't know, it seems like we've gotten away from that.
I know this sounds like a obvious statement, but like in order to do things, you have to do things. And so like naturally, like you're going to, if you keep doing enough and keep taking enough risks for the advancement of the kingdom, then you're not going to get it right every time. Like eventually one of us will say something really stupid on this podcast.
We haven't already.
Oh,
I mean, I don't think so.
I guess it depends on the definition of really stupid.
That's all in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But think about the disciples though. If they at the first bit of someone rejecting the gospel decided, I'm just going to take my ball and go home, I'm just going to quit,
We wouldn't be here.
right? We wouldn't be here. And so, I mean, to think about the quote unquote failure or rejections that they would have faced, like, talk about some failure when you're growing to tell a group about someone who's changed your life and how they should listen. And, here we are centuries later because they failed and continued,
But I think people do, either in the front or the back of their mind. They may think that God is leading them to do something, and they may be afraid to go out and do it because if it doesn't, quote, work, unquote, they'll be thinking they make God look bad when that isn't it at all. And I think there is a lack of doing and a lack of trying, at least maybe in part because of that doubt that we were talking about earlier that creeps in.
I remember a situation when I was in college that I really felt like God wanted me to do something, and I stepped out to do it. And from all outward view, all the views of someone outside looking in, it failed. I mean, completely flopped. And so, I'm struggling like, God, I know you wanted me to do this. Like, it is not working the way that I thought it would work. And I remember talking to a mentor about it and kind of processing through that. And he just, kind of encouraged me to think about, well, maybe it was just more about God just seeing if you were willing to just step out and try something. And, I guess going back to the freedom we've talked a little bit about before is knowing that on the journey, the success that we determine as success is not dependent upon us as far as the working of God, and being okay with the outcome of however God plays out what's going on in our life, as long as we're seeking to be faithful to him.
Okay. 43 minutes.
You got anything else?
Well, not that we can cover in 10 minutes.
So failure is a thing. I think
It doesn't have to be final.
I think there's some things to.
Now that'll preach, Broxton.
Come on, somebody.
I think there's some things like failure as in sin, okay, is something obviously that's a failure in our lives to process and know that don't walk in guilt of that sin, don't walk in this burden of that sin, but understand the magnitude of that sin that separates us from the Lord. And so for the four of us, I think it's important that we process through that in our minds and our listeners as we talk about this journey of knowing that we can experience the forgiveness of that sin and move forward from that. And then also I think the other side of failure is just, and I guess it maybe plays into sin of disobedience, but just missing something that God is calling us to. And again, his grace meets us in all of those areas. And his power will strengthen us to move forward from them. And I think learn and grow, because as I think we've said already on the journey, importance of our goal being for me to be closer to Jesus today than I was yesterday, and for me to be closer to Jesus tomorrow than I was today, is kind of, I think, learning from your failures and learning from those moments on your journey.
And we're so results oriented, and results doesn't necessarily mean success or failure. God gave a message to Jeremiah knowing that it was going to be rejected by his people, and yet Jeremiah was faithful in doing that, and therefore he honored God with it.
But the results that we are looking for are your reviews on our podcast. Chase is trying to get out without bumping that mic. All right, I think you did it.
Man, I thought it was a good discussion.
Yeah, I guess we're done.
I think we're done.
Since we're just kind of acting like we're done.
Wrapping it up.
All right, thanks for listening to episode 11 of The Journey. Don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcast, or I guess wherever you listen to podcasts. I guess there are other places that allow you to leave reviews. Find us on Substack, comment your feedback there. Wherever you're listening, how about you just give us some feedback? We appreciate you. You can always write to us at thejourney@rbcdothan.org. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.